Well, week 11's here already. As always, we'll take a look at last week's games, get you up to date on any news, injuries, look at the booms and busts from last week, and we'll look ahead to next week with our projection beaters and our game tier list. And we've got a special segment this week we're calling Intervention. We're each going to bring a player that we're worried about, air our grievances, get it off our chest, and ask each other for opinions. Should we trade that player, keep hold of them and hope they get back to the best, or do we just need to face facts and adjust our estimations on these players? As always, if you want to get in touch with us, you can write in at inthepocketacrossthepond@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram at inthepocketacrossthepond. I'm Alex Sharples. As always, I'm here with Alex and Lewis Brindle, and this is In the Pocket Across the Pond.
Lads, let's play a quick game of who said that and why. I'm going to give you 2 quotes by the same person. Tell me who said them and why. First quote: "Man, 14 gotta get up out of there." Quote 2: "Let's not forget he didn't start going off till bro got there." Who said that and why?
I know who said the first one, so if it's the same person, I'll let Sharples guess if he doesn't know, but I know who said that, and I know who about.
The only 14 I can think of would be Cortland Sutton, and so if that was the case, it would be someone off the Manning casts, and I know Patrick Mahomes was on there, so that would be my guess. But why he said it? Because he was watching the match.
It's much juicier than that, to be fair, Sharples. But
okay.
you got the right game. Al, do you want to enlighten us?
I'd say it'd be more juicy if this player was playing at the minute, but unfortunately Trayvon Diggs is out for the season, but it was Trayvon Diggs tweeting about his brother Stephon Diggs, I believe.
It was. Tweeting, "Man, 14 gotta get up out of there." And let's not forget, he didn't start going off till bro got there, assuming he being Josh Allen.
Got a point.
Some would argue that Josh Allen was maturing in his... Because Josh Allen was a quarterback who needed a lot of maturing and needed a lot of work. He was maturing in those first 2 years of his career. And you could also argue that Stephon Diggs has also not blown up until he got to the Bills, but whatever.
Yeah, Stephon Diggs was like a very hot and cold wide receiver in the league until he got to the Bills.
Stephon Diggs... the Vikings was not Justin Jefferson.
No,
you know what I mean.
No, yeah.
Like, there's a sort of mutual partnership here, which I think Trayvon Diggs is overlooking a little bit. But then again, you know, to be fair to Trayvon Diggs, how could you not overlook that when Josh Allen likes to throw the ball to the opposing team more than he does his brother?
Yeah.
14 feels like a clunky number. I wouldn't pick 14.
What would you pick?
I mean, 11, sleek.
11, yeah, nice. That's good.
The
disrespect.
2
Fat Ladies, 88.
The disrespect.
2 Fat Ladies, 88. CD Lamb, that's where he got it from.
You know what I mean? We
love
may as well start there then. Broncos 24-22 Bills. Are we even surprised by this? I mean, you know, I think we know why we call him cheeky Gabe, and it's because he's always facing with his back to the action. But are any of us surprised by this? I'm not, personally.
I'm not surprised by the result, but then when it came up after the game and it showed that the Bills are 5-5, that's when I was like, oh bloody hell! Actually, whoa! For some reason, it's like, you know. So I think with the Bills, yeah, they'll lose some stupid games, but they're always going to end up like 10 wins or something, you know, aren't they? But are they? Yeah. No, maybe not.
I don't think so this season, Sharps.
I mean, I am surprised because I expected the Bills to win. Keep waiting for the get right game that they normally have. But I mean, what a run from the Broncos now! Absolute giant slayers in the past couple of games.
Well,
are we buying it?
I've got a few
Nope.
stats that I was going to bring up later on for reasons that will become clear.
Okay.
Forget about it. No, not forget about it, sorry. Projection beaters, let's ride. There you go. There's a little spoiler. Would you lads call me a big old fat liar? Would you say that my pants are on fire if I told you that Russell Wilson is on course to throw 36 touchdowns to 8 interceptions? Yeah.
No, he's not.
Yeah.
Is he really?
Not turn the ball
Wow.
over. Well, one fumble in the past, I believe. One fumble for Russell Wilson in the last 3 games. No interceptions, 6 touchdowns on a wee bit of a heater. And I know he put stats up like this even last season in some games. All I'm saying is that Cortland Sutton edge of the end zone touchdown, that was vintage Russell Wilson, was it not? Scrambling around. Look,
It was. Yeah.
That scrambling, I did see, like, obviously it's a great touchdown. Colton Sutton, amazing catch. I did see, I think it was on like NFL Instagram, where it was like, according to next gen stats, the two sort of like least catchable passes that have been caught for a touchdown in the past 10 years were the Colton Sutton one last night and the Tyler Lockett one when Russell Wilson was in Seattle. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, are they not just bad for us?
No, because because the one last night was the only place that he could have put it for him to score the touchdown. So I think that that the title of that stat does a disservice to how good of a throw it was, to be honest with you, because it should be like tightest window in NFL history, you know what I mean? It's like, it was a great
Not
throw.
least catchable pass.
I know, yeah, least catchable pass. It's like he's thrown a Kenny Pickett ankle pass.
They might as well have put
special.
it. They might as well have written Russell Wilson stumbles into a pile of poo while throwing a touchdown pass,
which he has done plenty of times in recent history. But I think Rusty's playing pretty well. Anyway, Browns 33, 31 Ravens. Got a question. Browns legit or Ravens flaws, Sharples?
Ooh, yeah. The Browns are certainly, I think, a legit defense. Although obviously, I know the Ravens scored 31. That interception for a touchdown was a little bit of a freak one, but I think I mentioned it last week. It's just this Ravens offense, as good as it can be, and as important as it can be, it just feels like it's always got a stutter in them. And then when you combine that with the Browns, who are always capable of making a play on defense, it was always going to be a tight one. But yeah, I think I'd have to say it's the Ravens throwing it away. Really, they had chances to win it, and again, they didn't quite pull the trigger and put the game away. And you saw what happened. The Browns came back and won it. So I think the Ravens have let it slip, really.
Lou?
Yeah, I probably agree with that. Although I would say that the Browns did play incredibly tough, like loads of just mean runs and like yards after contact and yards after catch. You know, Jerome Ford and David Njoku did several of them themselves. Like, they're just dragging these defenders like down the field. It was unreal. And even the Browns' defense, even when they did get points put up against them, they sort of came round the other side and went, okay, right, you're going to put up points against us, so we're going to make plays and force turnovers and score on defense then.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, I think I've just talked myself into the opposite argument now then. I suppose it's the Browns being good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super impressed by the Browns. I think they're probably heading to the playoffs. Defense is just incredible. They've got a lot of playmakers around there, even if the quarterback, Deshaun Watson, to me does look super sluggish still. That idea that the Ravens can't put teams away has been a thing for a few years, and you kind of with the start of this game, with how it went, with that ridiculous play on defense, it looked like they were just going to suffocate another team. But fair play to the Browns. Texans 30, 27 Bengals. Same question. We'll go to Sharples first again. Texans legit or Bengals flaws?
I mean, I think I'm gonna have to give it to the Texans. I've been skeptical to really sort of get on this train yet, but they're putting together too many performances now where to overlook them. CJ Stroud looks great. Me, after slagging off the running back room last week, Devin Singletary decided to take it personally and just run for 100 yards every time he touched the ball. I mean, 30 carries. Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I still hadn't quite been on board with the Bengals since the start of the year, just from how bad they started. But yeah, fair play. The Texans went toe-to-toe with them, and I think we're really starting to see some positive changes because, they've been a swamp of nothingness for years now, but obviously the new coach comes in.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much since the Texans' inception when was the Texans? Late 90s? They've been rubbish. Yeah, like I've said before, you can see why people were clamouring for DeMeco Ryans. Lou?
Yeah, I'd agree. Really fun game as well. Like, both quarterbacks were interesting because they both had decent moments, but both pretty sloppy. I know Stroud played great, but interception, 2 fumbles is sloppy to me, and Burrow 2 interceptions, but both with over 340 passing yards and both with 2 total touchdowns. It was like the same team was playing against each other. Like, if you looked at the stats, both defenses also made plays in moments but gave up big plays. They were sort of a mirror image of each other in this game. But yeah, I'd say the Texans are legit because under Ryans, that defense will start coming really, really good. And I mean, that front office has just got to be sitting back and just laughing at how they've showed up the future for a decade plus with Stroud. Really good stuff.
Yeah. Didn't expect the Bengals to lose many games the rest of the season, so not a good start losing basically the first game after everyone said that. But I mean, a lot of injuries. Even Chase didn't look fully healthy. And as you said, I think you're right this one off. I mean, the Stroud one just goes to show how much of a lottery the draft is, and the bandwagon that we've been on for a while. We don't know why the Cardinals would want to do that whole process over again, because as we see with someone like Trevor Lawrence, who was the best prospect since Andrew Luck and even more hyped prospect since high school than Caleb Williams, not panning out for him. They have a winner in terms of the lottery, in terms of Kyler Murray, and as do the Texans here, whereas the Panthers, not so much. So for all the teams, it's a cautionary tale for all the teams who just think getting the first pick is going to solve all the problems, I suppose. But Lions 41, 38 Chargers. How far can both of these teams go? Give me either a round in the playoffs, or if you don't think that they're going to make the playoffs, but give me a round in the playoffs, or how far you think both of these teams can go, Lou?
Lions can get to the conference championship game, I feel. They're going to win a playoff game, which was my bold prediction earlier in the season, just throwing that out there. Yeah, they can get to the conference championships. I feel they're playing really good football. I think they can compete with anyone. The Chargers the Chargers aren't going to make the playoffs, I don't think. The division's too good. The two hurt, and this defense is rubbish. Their ability to put up points is undeniably impressive. But every single week when they lose, you see people coming after Justin Herbert. At what point is this not on his shoulders? The guy's putting up 30 plus points weekly with a team where he's got one wide receiver pretty much. Like, take it off Herbert's shoulders. Some of these other players need to start stepping up on the defense and stuff like that. But yeah, I think no, I don't think the Chargers are making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers' defense is terrible, and the Lions. I think I mentioned in my Jared Goff projection beater kind of argument last week how the Lions definitely beat up unbeatable defenses, and they were, again, popping guys open. They look like a well-oiled machine. It's funny, you'd imagine a Dan Campbell coach team to play like the Browns do, but actually when they're clicking and when they've got a favourable matchup like they did against the Chargers, it's another story, as we saw when they come against someone like the Ravens. But when they've got a favourable matchup, they're just so smooth on offense, and it's like hot knife through butter at times against the Chargers. It really was. Sharps, how far can either of these teams go, though?
I think the Lions will win a game. I don't think they'll win two. I think they'll come up short against the likes of the Eagles, Cowboys, Niners, but certainly win a game. Chargers, I think that division, obviously Chiefs aside, I think is just going to vulture too many wins off each other. I think, I think aside from the Chiefs, I'm not seeing much playoff action there. I think Chargers the second best team on paper in that division, but no, I don't think they're going to get out of it. It's just not clicking. And I agree. I don't think Justin Herbert's to blame at all. I think it's the pieces around him. And that defense is head scratcher because they've got some really nice, pieces in there. Joey Bosa, Derwin James. I don't know why it's not working, but it's.
I'll tell you why it's not working, because
it's not Herbert's fault.
We've seen this defense work this season, but the reason why it isn't working is because you don't get to play the Jets every week.
Yeah. People who are playing a lot of money,
true.
I would agree that I think the Lions could get to the conference championship. I don't see the Chargers winning the playoff game. And again, narratives are starting to be formed now after week 10, and we're starting to see kind of the ebbs and flows of people's stories and what adjustments actually have been made. And someone like Kevin Stefanski, who we all said was on the hot seat, is going to be there next year. The Browns are playing really well. Brandon Staley, don't think so. And McDermott as well. No adjustments seem to have been made here. And I suppose it goes to show the kind of great turnaround that Stefanski has kind of done there. Out of the three of them, I think I thought Stefanski was the most surefire person to get fired, closely followed by Staley. But I now can't see a world where Brandon Staley's still there next year, because he's a defensive head coach.
No, and they've I don't think they do, but I mean, I think they brought Kellen Moore in to succeed him ultimately when he gets fired this season.
Right. Yeah. Well, elsewhere, the 49ers stomp the Jags. We're going to be talking about a particular Jags player coming up. Bears, Colts, Bucks, Raiders win some thoroughly unimpressive games, it has to be said. Steelers, Cardinals with Kyle Murray back, Seahawks, Vikings winning. Some surprise shootouts, some nice amount of points scored, although I feel like we expected points in that Seahawks versus Commanders game. It's just a shame that only one relevant fantasy player scored any points in that Commanders game. Go and look up the fantasy stat sheet from that Commanders game. The top three wide receivers combined for 9.9 fantasy points, and Jahan Dotson with a big old fat goose. Crazy. Lou mentioned to me the other day that Sam Howell is around the QB4 on the season, which doesn't seem possible when you look at the output of his fantasy pieces. It's like, where's it all going?
It's not just that. Sam Howell leads the league in passing yards.
To whom? To who? I don't know.
Brian Robinson.
Maybe he just keeps doing that thing where he'll like throw it against a defensive lineman's helmet and he'll catch it himself and run. And maybe we've just not seen it, but he just keeps doing that. But anyway, Cowboys, yeehaw, you knew it. For once, we'll save you the pain, Sharples, by just saying, yeah. That's it.
I just want to also say, interestingly, completely doubled down on that notion that they're a pass first team. But I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yes. My impressive victory is the Texans. I thought it was a really fun game. Stroud, as Lou said, a little bit sloppy at times, but looked clutch again. And just when we thought the Bengals were back to Super Bowl contenders, Super Bowl frontrunners, Texans get them. So I'm going to go Texans impressive victory. What about you, Lou?
I'm going to go 49ers because, they stomped all over an informed Jags team at home. So, 49ers.
Sharps?
Yeah, I went 49ers as well, and I know the Jags haven't been as sparkling as we thought they'd be, but still 6-3, and Niners just made it look like absolutely nothing. Like even at the end when they were trying to get McCaffrey the 18th touchdown in a row,
I'm throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there as well. Time. Just throwing it out there. That was stupid.
Oh yeah,
it's all well and good as laughing about it here, like, hey, we're giving it Christian McCaffrey 4 plays in a row. What if he tears his ACL on one of those plays when he doesn't need to be in there? I'm sorry, you're talking about the NFL. That is a legitimate possibility. I think it was pretty stupid, and obviously we can all laugh about it now because it didn't happen. But there's no need for him to be in there getting the ball that many times because of some record.
I mean, I get where you're coming from, but as a McCaffrey owner, I'd say, shut up. Shut up.
It's an important record for the players, Lou. I mean, the Niners do look good. I said this to Lou the other day. I'm going to reiterate it here. I personally think the best team in the NFL is the Eagles, and then there's a little bit of a gap between them and everyone else at the moment. I think we saw for the past month that the 49ers are human, and it was good to see them get back on track, but all the games that the 49ers lost over the past month, the Eagles play just as bad but somehow win those games. Anyway, not buying it win. I'm going to go the Raiders because they're terrible. Lou?
I'm going to go the Bears because they're terrible.
Sharps?
I'm going to go Cardinals. I also think they're terrible. I know Kyler's come back in, and I do rate Kyler, but I feel like they're just gearing up to blow it up. So I can't have any faith in it.
And should we all do this in unison? Maybe we should. Just a bit of a hint. Maybe we should all try and say this in German. What's the worst team in the league in German? Anyway, it's 3, 2, 1. It's the Patriots.
Patriots.
Lou's shaking his head.
Whoa.
Lou's shaking his head. No. How is it anyone? I know what you mean. I know who the Cowboys played as well, but the Patriots don't have the All right,
have you forgot that the Panthers exist?
I feel like
the Panthers.
Lou is doing his best to alienate himself from all of our listeners.
I'm sorry, but I can sort of at least watch the Patriots a bit because it's quite fun seeing this great franchise, just sort of come crumbling down. Even though I did forget that Germany game happened when I was writing my notes, but the Panthers are just unwatchable, completely unwatchable, terrible.
I don't know, mate. I had to,
and I personally thought that they were going to be Super Bowl contenders this year.
The Panthers. You got something in common with some of our listeners. Well, I don't know, mate. I had to watch that Germany game with my feet like dangling above the fire, so every time I almost fell asleep, it'd like jolt me back awake, and my feet are burned to a crisp. Is all I'll say. The Patriots are terrible. Mac Jones is truly awful. He's a dreadful player. I think it was before we did the pod, so I won't have receipts. But even when he went to that Pro Bowl, I was thoroughly unconvinced after his rookie season. of just him being a dynamic playmaker. And he's just bad. He's bad, and he sounds like a 17-year-old boy. Just a weird image him on screen being like, oh, yeah, I was... I got taken out of the game, and, I was like, go on, Bailey!
I think the video of him walking from the draft room to the stage ruled out any notion for me of him being a dynamic playmaker.
When you can't even walk 10 yards with any form of dynamism, you know that you're not going to succeed in the NFL.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, weekly top 5 fantasy players at each position. Spoiler alert, Mac Jones is not, and I don't think will ever again be on here. Quarterback position, number 1, Dak Prescott, by a mile, 37 points. Herbert with 28 at 2. Then we had Dobbs, Howell, and Geno. Purdy and Goff with nice games as well. Running back, Brian Robinson Jr., 27. Jahmyr Gibbs is still here, 26. Singletary, Eckler, Javonte rounding out the top 5, but McCaffrey, Ken Walker, and the 2 Steelers running backs with nice games. Wide receiver, Keenan Allen and CeeDee Lamb with monster games, 40 points and 39 points respectively. Brandon Cooks there, 32. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mike Evans round out the top 5. Noel Brown, Jamar Chase, Tyler Lockett, and Chris Olave. Lou will be happy to know. Chris Olave woke up because Jameis was in, and Jameis was cooking. Okay? Get him in. He was absolutely cooking. If any of our listeners played fantasy in the year that Jameis went 30 and 30, it was unbelievable. That was the Lamar Jackson MVP year. And if Jameis Winston, if you took off just 15 of those INTs, he was right with Lamar, like fantasy points wise. Yeah, just the 15. He would have
15. Yeah.
He would have still thrown 15 though. That's the crazy thing. He was. I think because he threw 5,000 yards that season as well. He was unbelievable.
I mean, yeah, him coming into that game as someone who is a manager of Chris Olave in multiple leagues. It was an absolute joy because Chris Olave scored 18.9 of his 21.4 fantasy points with Jameis Winston. He actually only had one target with Derek Carr on the field, which was in the third quarter, and very serendipitously, that was the play that Derek Carr got injured on. His one target to Chris Olave.
Well, I think they should play Jameis. At tight end, TJ Hawkinson with a big 30 points. Trey McBride, 21. Kittle, Kincaid, and Conklin rounding out the top 5 there. Some notable busts from this week. We had that goose from Jahan Dotson.
Can we just talk CeeDee Lamb for a moment?
Sorry. Yeah, let's go on. Talk CeeDee Lamb and Sharples. You talk about a player that you really enjoyed watching this week. Before I get into those busts, let's bring the mood even further up because some of those busts are depressing.
I just want to say CeeDee Lamb. Just one sentence. Over the past 3 games, CeeDee Lamb is averaging 36 PPR fantasy points per game.
Not bad, that. Not bad.
Yeah.
Sharps, do you want to give us a
and he was my MVP, and he was my MVP, and he was my fantasy MVP.
Jaw-dropping stat on someone as well.
Who drafted him in the league, though?
Who drafted him in the main league?
It didn't fall to me. Sometimes you have to play the draft how it falls. You can't be, I know Sharples, you love Cortland Sutton, but you were drafting how it fell, so you didn't take Cortland Sutton with your first pick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas I love the Dallas defense, and I took him 4th with my 4th pick.
Third. Stop sneaking it back. I'd have to say Dak, purely because I picked him up in our sleeper league 3 weeks ago, and since then he's got something daft like 35, 47, 36. So let's keep going, Cowboys offense. I've got Dak in one league, I've got CD win the other. How about those Cowboys?
Yeehaw. Sharples initiated a yeehaw. Wow, the first for everything.
Good.
I would say that Amon St. Brown is quietly having a monster year. Just go back to his stats and look at how many games he's gone over 100 yards. I don't think he scored less than about 11 points of fantasy either. And I'll do the embarrassing thing that Lou did and say, he was my MVP, he's my MVP.
There's no need to play my clip back at me.
Oh, notable bus. Goose Johan Dotson. What? I played him in a league. I'm not sure why. It must have been in that corridor in Sharples' building again that makes you pick Kyle Pitts. Trevor Lawrence. Speaking of MVPs, this says Alexander Mattison on here.
Still time.
Derrick Henry. I saw Derrick Henry's stat line and for some reason became convinced that he'd been unbelievably disappointed on the season when he's not been. He's been fine, which I suppose for Derrick Henry is really disappointing in itself. But yeah, Tony Pollard, Hollywood Brown, Calvin Ridley, Washington fantasy wide receivers. Obviously, we'll put Stephon Diggs in there as well. Lou, you stole my segment. You got anything to say about it this week?
Heading to the booth?
Yeah.
Well, it's Bill Belichick, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, he'd get a cushy job, I think, Bill would.
He'd get a great job.
Have you heard the rumours that he
I
might
have
be
heard
traded?
the rumours that he might be traded. And
because apparently he got traded in. I never knew that.
Where was he at? Was he at the Browns?
He signed a
Cleveland.
contract
Jets,
with
yeah.
the Jets.
All right.
Oh, the Jets, yeah.
And then immediately
Okay.
left. Yeah.
Do you blame him?
I can't imagine. Imagine if he'd have stayed.
I feel like there's a lot of teams that...
I want to see him go to Fox with Brady. I think that would be just a really weird and awkward dynamic, the two of them in the commentary booth together.
Just get them two and Larry David in the middle of it, just stirring it around.
I feel like Belichick, he's not got the... he's not got the personality for it. It'd be like if Belichick was on there. It'd be like on Sky Sports when they used to have like Roy Keane and Mourinho in the same room doing analysis on Super Sunday, and it was like being in a morgue or something. You know, you need some high energy in there, and I think a lot of teams would blow up whatever they have to get Bill Belichick. So, but I would probably agree. Anyway, projection beaters from last week. It was pretty good again. It was pretty good. It wasn't the scalding hot week of previous. However, Lou had a pretty good one. It was a bit of a miss on Levis.
Yeah.
Quentin Johnson.
Yeah, he's crap. He's rubbish. He's crap.
Did I not say this? By the way, did I not say he was rubbish?
I was looking. As well, the Quentin Johnston one, the Johnson one, it's like obviously it's not my proudest hit.
Boo Earns. He's a hit, and he must have been projected about 2 points.
But it is the best game of his career. It is the best game of his career, and there was multiple long pass interference calls that he had against him. If he brings one of them down, his yardage looks completely different.
It's not exactly a high bar to set. The previous best game of Quentin Johnson's career was a game where he didn't trip himself up, I assume. So, yeah, I mean, hit, well done. Pat yourself on the back, Lou. George Kittle and Jahmyr Gibbs had great games, though. So there you go. I had a nice hit with Jared Goff. Tony Pollard, we will get to him. Metcalf had his best game of the season. It wasn't quite a hit, but you're happy if you played him. And Trey McBride, yes, get in, 21.1 fantasy points. And then Sharples, Old Faithful, Geno Smith, big time hit. I feel like every time over this year and last year, whenever Sharples has picked Geno Smith, he's been hit. I was happy about that. I had him on my main league team. Mixon was fine, just as he's been all season. I feel like Joe Mixon has a fantasy finish of 12.5 points every week. But Hopkins got Levised.
He did.
Oh
he
no.
Did.
What happened here?
Oh,
It had to come.
It's because I think this is the only week.
It's bye week this week.
This is the only week so far, probably this season, maybe in his career, that a 4.3 fantasy finish for Taysom Hill is marked down as a miss. But it got a bit rich last week, Sharples. He still took it.
Yeah. Got greedy. I got greedy.
I mean, I think all in all, though, it's an improvement on how we were doing at the start of the season. But yeah, you've got some news/injuries, Lou.
I do, yeah. We'll start with a few quarterbacks. Derek Carr, as you alluded to before, he's ruled out of the Saints game. He suffered a right shoulder injury.
Yes.
And a concussion. But the Saints are on bye this week and he hopes to be back after that. So
Damn.
Gutted. Taylor Heineke exited the Falcons game with a hamstring injury late in the fourth quarter, so backup Desmond Ridder reluctantly had to fill in.
Thanks. Have you ever heard of anything more scripted than that? By the way,
I know.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Did you see that Bijan Robinson was fielding punts? He got a punt return.
Well, he needs to get on the field somehow.
I thought it was a joke, but it definitely said number 7 on the back of the person who caught the punt.
Well, Bijan Robinson had a pretty nice week, but it's classic Arthur Smith just doing the complete wrong thing when he's trying to do the right thing. Resting Bijan Robinson, preserving your future talent equals never playing him. Oh, getting Bijan Robinson involved in games, giving him touches equals putting him out there on punt returns. What are you doing, mate?
If he's a ball boy, does that count as getting him touches?
Yeah. Deshaun Watson was in a walking boot after the Browns-Ravens game, but he says he'll be fine.
He was fancy dress. He was being a RoboCop. He was going straight to a fancy dress party. Okay? You're reading way too much into it, mate.
Right, okay. And then Alexander Mattison suffered a concussion in the Vikings game. So, the deal with concussions, expect him to probably miss this week. So if you're in a pinch, Ty Chandler might be an all right pickup. Then a little bit of news. Go on, Sharples.
Sorry, Lou, just to jump in dead quick. When I picked Mattison as my MVP, I did not know he was going to get a concussion in week 10. So it's null and void.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Gonna have to get the rule book out there, I think. We'll get back to you. So the Bills have fired their offensive coordinator. Ken Dorsey. He's gone. Obviously, the team not happy with how that offense is shaping up. We'll see what happens from there. And then
they'll just hold on to the end of the season and they can have Brian Daboll back, so it's fine. Yeah.
Dabester.
That is true. That is very, very true. And then Aaron Rodgers says that he plans on being back mid-December. Do it. See what happens. Go on, do it and see what happens, mate. I really want him to go out there and see what happens.
Not a cat
try and prove science and the human body wrong.
Yeah. Not a cat and hell's chance that's happening. I'm saying that.
No.
No. I mean, it's fun. It's a fun thing to say. I don't know if I'd say it out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not happening. I would be beyond amazed. But yeah.
I say do it.
Dare you. It can't.
It can't get any worse.
One-legged Aaron Rodgers is better than whatever they've got on at the minute.
Exactly.
It's time for some fantasy interventions, lads. We've all brought a player who we want to get some opinions on. We're going to state a case of why this fantasy player needs an intervention, and then we're going to try and advise each other on what to do. Trade, adjust, or stick with it. So, should we advise each other and fantasy managers of these players to trade them away, to adjust their expectations on the player and keep them in the lineup, but obviously have that new context in there when they're making start-sit decisions, or stick with it, they're going to be fine. Who wants to go first? Who wants to take a seat first? Go on.
I'll go first. I don't know what to do. I'm tearing my hair out, boys. I mean, I, like a lot of people, drafted this man, in the first round, end of the first round. And it started off really well, after the first 4 weeks, he was nearly on 100 points. And he's the wide receiver 14 still, but those early weeks are just skewing it. He's still running crisp, tasty routes, probably the tastiest in the league. It's just with terrible quarterback play. I don't know, and the new coach has come in and they've won a couple of games, but it's not really sparked any life into him. And he just looks a shell of his former self, and it's Davante Adams, wide receiver for the Raiders. I didn't actually draft him, but this is what a lot of people are thinking. I wanted to draft him though, and I think those first few weeks when he was getting 40 points and that was absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, we had the little bit of unpleasantness in the middle where it's like, I need more targets. So what's going to happen? The new coaching staff has come in, and like I said, they've won 2 now on the bounce, but not really an increased role for Davante Adams. There's a lot of draft capital tied up with him. I would be reluctant to trade him based on the draft capital, but it's getting to the point where it's like, should we do it? What do you reckon?
I mean, based on the fact that Davante Adams was really good last year and he had a good start to the season, it means that he can still thrive with mediocre quarterback play. So, personally, I would be leaning towards stick with it, and Davante Adams will probably be good, be alright. I don't think you need to adjust and view him as like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 yet. I think you can still play him with confidence as your wide receiver 1. It's not been very nice, and the Raiders aren't a very nice team to watch, but you just hope that they realise that throwing the ball to easily the best player on the team is the answer. So I'm going to say stick with it on Davante Adams, Lou.
I would. Obviously the trade deadline is approaching in fantasy football. I would see if you could trade him. See if there's still that reverence for where you drafted him at the start of the season, and see if you can get sort of a high-end wide receiver 2 for him. Just because with this quarterback, which with McConnell in, I just don't see any sort of decent ceiling for Davante Adams. Like, his ceiling for me with the current situation at the Raiders is 14 points, which is not where you drafted Davante Adams. If I can go and get a pretty hot wide receiver 2 who's popping off a little bit, who could provide me with actually some boom games, which I don't think Adams is going to give you, I would probably advise for that, which is bad because I do agree with what Al's saying. Davante Adams is a great player, and that team needs to realise that no matter how bad the quarterback play is, you just need to keep peppering him. But I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think the quarterback play will be good enough to even sustain a decent fantasy rest of season for Adams. So if you could trade him for something, I'm not saying trade him for pittance, and if you can get a decent player, I would probably do that.
So trading more for a Pittman than a pittance.
Yes, something like that. So that's actually a really good example, I'd say.
Would you trade him for any of the famous wide receiver 2s, the 3 of them, Higgins, Waddle, Devonta Smith?
I would trade Devonta Smith for him. Yeah, the other 2 I'd have to think about, but I would probably be picking up Devonta Smith for Adams at this point.
Okay. Well, thanks for that one, Sharps. Thanks for bringing that one to the table. I want to get your guys' opinion on a player very close to mine and Lewis's heart, Sir Mr. Tony Pollard. So, who saw this coming at the start of the season? He was the running back 7 last season. with 1,388 total yards. He was averaging 12 attempts and 2.4 receptions per game. He was a top 7 running back 6 times throughout the season and only not a running back 2, so only outside of the top 24 5 times. And I say all that because he was a backup to Ezekiel Elliott last season at the Cowboys. Now, this season he's already got 5 games outside of the top 24, and he is, in huge quotation marks, the dude in the running back room at the Cowboys. So, given all those previous stats from last season, the hype was sky high this season for Tony Pollard, and that showed. He was drafted running back 8, 16th overall, middle of the second round. However, if I told you in August that the Cowboys would be averaging 379 yards a game, which is 4th in the NFL, and 30 points per game, which is 22nd, in the NFL, you'd probably say that draft price for Tony Pollard is a bargain. Well, here's the issue. The Cowboys are down in 11th for rushing yards per game, and there's been a clear switch made since the bye week into just a full-blown passing team. The pass play percentage has gone up 10% in the past 3 or 4 games. Perhaps most damagingly for Pollard, the Cowboys are increasingly throwing it in the red zone with that shift in offensive strategy. Through the first month of the season, Pollard was averaging 6 red zone carries per game, and now it's half that. And it's not even just in the red zone. We saw this past weekend the Cowboys were killing the Giants, and they were still throwing it all over the place for the entire game. So, all of that being said, what does that equate to? Well, it means a running back who hasn't eclipsed 13 fantasy points more than once all season. That was in week 1. And I suppose the most damning stat for Pollard is he's averaging more attempts than last season, which simply means his touches are not as valuable this year as they were last year. He isn't being put in fantasy scoring positions by the Cowboys. And to be honest, they don't need him to be in positions to score fantasy or real life points. As we saw at the weekend, they're putting up enough points as they are. You know, I'd love to know the average record of teams that drafted Pollard or have him on the teams. I know I'm in 6 leagues. I looked earlier on, and only one team that drafted Tony Pollard has a winning record. So, lads, what am I doing? That was a mouthful, but what am I doing with Tony Pollard? Am I sticking with it? Am I trading? Am I adjusting?
I think it's tough. I mean, I remember we had the conversation on him last week, and I thought that, you know, coming off the bye, he had a couple of tough games, but a run against the Giants, then Carolina and Washington and Seattle would be a chance for him to perk back up again. But you're right, the way the offense has been since the bye week, they're not using him, and there's not been much signs that they're going to. Very little work in the red zone, decent number of carries, not much in the passing game. I'd be looking to trade him, but truthfully, I don't know what someone's going to offer for him at this point, unless you get a big, you know, one of you two noobs, and you get a big cowboy head that wants to get them all. I don't know. I would certainly be looking to trade him, but at this point, I think you have to adjust your expectations of his value, and so trade him, but realise that you ain't going to get that second round draft capital that it cost to get him in.
You might have to settle. You might have to settle for a Javonte Williams or a Jerome Ford if you want to try and get any sort of value for Pollard at the minute, I suppose, maybe.
Yeah, I would say hold, just because I think the talent is still there. I've not seen anything in Pollard's game that says he's lost a step. Just the opportunities haven't been there. So maybe it's adjusting your expectations of this offense, like you were saying, Al. You know, like this is a pass first team now, no matter what the game script. And that is to the detriment of the team's starting running back. And he is still the team's starting running back, even though, you know, Rico Dowdle might bust a run for 20 yards. It's still Tony Pollard's backfield. I do believe, obviously naive Cowboys fan, whatever, I do believe there are going to be better games ahead for Pollard, but maybe not what we saw last year and what we were hoping for this year.
Cheers to that, lads. Lou, who have you got?
I have gone for a player who I was unanimously out on in the off-season. And then I came round on him because I got him quite cheap in our main league draft, and I was like, oh, hey, up, he's fallen to me here. And he started off really nicely, and I was like, whoa, okay, I was wrong. No. Maybe Calvin Ridley is washed because he's not demanding the targets on this team, whereas Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram are. He's clearly the third, maybe the fourth option on this offense. What do you do with Calvin Ridley?
I do think this is a comment on how bad Trevor Lawrence has been playing as well, but as you're saying, Christian Kirk's been pretty usable at times for fantasy this year. I think the name isn't going to get you much anymore.
Very
Calvin
usable.
Ridley. Yeah, I think the name isn't going to get you much anymore with Calvin Ridley. I would say the best course of action is to adjust, and by adjust I mean put him on your bench for now. Don't drop him. I would bench Calvin Ridley for now and see what happens, personally.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to play him because he has had a couple of weeks spattered here and there where he's had points, but it's just so hard to predict when that's going to happen. That unless you're playing him in the flex slot at a pinch, I really couldn't advocate lining him up each week. So yeah, I think it's a case of readjusting your expectations, and if you've got a player on bye and he needs to slot in, he might come in and score 15, 20 points and great, but you can't put him in your lineup with any consistency, which is obviously heart wrenching for where you drafted him, which was probably third, fourth round, something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's just adjusting it, and yeah, that's all you really can do, because like Al said, I don't know what real value you can get from it at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope that was helpful.
Lads.
I hope that was helpful for people listening who have any of those players. Tough one. Hopefully your record's good enough that you don't have to just blow it all up and get anything for them, that you can kind of sit and hold. But yeah.
And just before we go any further, as always, want to tell you about NFL Store. Sweet little discount code we've got. Enter promo code TOUCHBACK, all capital letters, all one word. Get 25% off some really decent bad team jerseys, like the Jets, like the Giants, like the Commanders. If you support a bad team, represent. Get a jersey. You follow the link in the description. We get a little bit of kickback from that if you buy something from NFL Store, but they got all sorts for you there. Yeah, promo code TOUCHBACK, 25% off. Link in the description.
Okay, let's look ahead to Week 11. Week 11, teams on bye, Falcons, Saints, Patriots and Colts. Now, not often, lads, that you get basically just as many teams on bye as fantasy players that are going to be missed this week, but certainly not the Rams, Chiefs, Dolphins, Eagles of last week. Pretty nice week, bye week wise for fantasy. You're not playing anyone from the Patriots, I would hope. I'd hope you're not putting yourself through that. Anyway, let's look ahead to the week. The way that we always do.
Forget about it.
It's the Forget About It section. It's players that are in your lineup no matter what. Don't worry about it, even if they're not playing too well at the minute. You're putting them in. We're not going to talk about them after this section. So at the quarterback, it's Josh Allen, it's Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, Dak Prescott.
Forget about it.
Running back, McCaffrey, Eckler, Etienne, Barkley, Jacobs. DeAndre Swift's back. Let's stick with Derrick Henry.
Forget about it.
Wide receiver, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill's back, Cooper Kupp's back, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs. Stick with him. He's still in Buffalo for now. Monroe and Brown, Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb.
Forget about it.
And tight end, Hawkinson, Laporta, Andrews, Kittle, and Kelsey. Didn't really notice he was gone last week, though.
Forget about it.
But into our projection beaters, the players that we think are going to outscore the ESPN projections by more than 4 points. I don't know if you've heard, but we've been on a bit of a tour recently with these projection beaters. And with that in mind, I'm going to start first. speaking of on a tour, my quarterback, let's ride. 15.6 fantasy point projection versus Minnesota. It's Russell Wilson. I've already gone through all the stats on how he's on a little bit of a heater at the minute. Russell Wilson is, he's not been turning the ball over. Maybe Sean Payton is quietly fixing Russ, as we saw, vintage touchdown, uncatchable pass. That's how good he is. He's throwing things that shouldn't be caught. They're that good. He gets a potential shootout in Minnesota this week and a modest 15-point projection to go with it. The last time I said something similar to that was in week 2 when Russ was playing the Commanders, and that worked out. So why can't this too? Let's ride. Sharples is your quarterback.
I've gone for the man who will be grinding Russell Wilson into the dirt that game. Josh Dobbs, quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Denver giving up the 7 most points. Denver giving up the 7 most points to fantasy quarterbacks, and it's not looked pretty at all for Dobbs. You can tell he doesn't know what's going on out there, but the fact is he's putting up points. Pretty much 25 points in his last 2 games. And for me, the most impressive thing is those beautiful muscular legs that he's got. 66 yards and a touchdown in the first game, 44 and another rushing touchdown in the second. I love me a rushing quarterback because it's just absolute fantasy gold. So even though he doesn't know what routes people are going to be running, he knows one thing. He's got wheels. So I'm going for Josh Dobbs, a rushing touchdown, and maybe just 250 yards, and that'll probably get me my hit. Projected 17.8 points. Let's ride.
Yeah. Now, I can't tell if Lou's stuck, or he's just been pulling the same expression for the past minute. He's got...
I'm going to say, he was giving me nothing.
Yeah. You were kind of cracking jokes, and you looked thoroughly unimpressed with everything that you were saying. That was very good. No, he wasn't interested whatsoever. I could see you racking your brains. I could hear the cogs going, and Lou was just like, nope, I'm not even cracking a smile. I'm going to stay looking frog-like.
Tough crowd.
And he's back. Lou, technical issues. Did you hear anything Sharples said? Did you hear anything he said, Sharples? We just want to get your opinion on what he said briefly, because the only evidence that we have says that you were thoroughly unimpressed with every word he said.
Well, I mean, that's business as usual, really, with anything Sharples says. But
Yeah.
I think he did say some good stuff about Josh Dobbs.
Who's your quarterback, Lou?
My quarterback's Kyler Murray, projected 17.9 points. Looked pretty agile and elusive in his first game back after that lengthy injury. 6 rushing attempts, 33 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Exactly what you come to expect from Murray, and he didn't miss a beat in that department. And I know he didn't throw a touchdown, but he still had 249 passing yards, a lot of which went to tight end Trey McBride. So I do expect him to get back on track with his wide receivers this week. You know, Hollywood Brown, Michael Wilson, Chet Johnson. Against the Texans team, obviously they've been firing on all cylinders on offense, but on defense they've given up over 280 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns per game over the past 2 shootout weeks. So this is going to be Murray's first real test since returning, I think. The odds have this as the highest over-under of the week at 47.5, which not only speaks to how well the Texans' offense has been performing, but also speaks to Murray's return in this offense, I think. So the Cardinals, they're going to have to put the ball in his hands and ask him to make plays if they want to compete in this matchup. And I think that is exactly what Kyler's going to do this week.
Didn't realise that the Falcons traded Johnson. Running back, I'm going to go Aaron Jones, projected 15.1 against the Chargers. Now, Aaron Jones has been pretty disappointing this season, but he's an extremely talented player who gets a bunch of opportunities out of this backfield. He's probably the best offensive player on the Packers team, to be honest with you. Plays the Chargers, who currently can't stop anything. So I'd say he's a shoo-in for 20 fantasy points, and for some reason he's only projected 15. So I rest my case. Sharps?
Yeah, I've gone for a guy that I'm quite surprised at how low his projection is based on last week. Going up against an Arizona Cardinals defense that's giving up the second most points to fantasy running backs at the moment. Devin Singletary projected 9.5, which I think is obscenely low. He got 23 points last week. I think that is because ESPN is assuming that Dameon Pierce will be coming back. He's also got a projection of 9.3 and that they'll be splitting the workload, but I don't think they will. I drafted Pierce, obviously, 5th round pick, and he's done absolutely nothing this season. I don't see what incentive the Texans have to play him, especially coming off the back of an injury. Missed the last couple of weeks. I think Singletary's going to get the bulk of the workload, and we saw what happened last week. He got 30 carries, turned that into 23 points and 150 rushing yards. So yeah, I'm attacking the projection. Devin Singletary projected 9.5. Let's have another 20-piece. Nice. Devin.
I'm going to go Devon Achane. Projected 12.7 points. I want to give people confidence starting him right away on his return from injured reserve. We know that it was a knee sprain, so much easier to return to a normal workload quicker than if it was like a tear or something more serious than that. Couple that with Raheem Mostert, his fairly underwhelming run as the out-and-out starter in the backfield. Yeah, he had that massive 34-point game against the Panthers in that first game where it was just his backfield. But then, after that, Mostert was only able to muster 31 fantasy points across the next 3 games combined. So I think this team really needs Achane back so it can lean on the running game again and sort of open up that offense. And we know Achane's a stud, averaging 25 fantasy points in the games that he's played, 7 total touchdowns, 527 total yards in 4 games played. You have to start him, really. Like, that start obviously becomes easier when it's a matchup against the Raiders, who they've been playing better as of late, sure, winning some games, but still over the past 3 games they're giving up over 150 rushing yards a game. Achane, he's a must start on his return.
The wide receiver position, I'm going to go Hollywood Brown, projected 13.6, Houston. We've actually not seen much of the Kyler Hollywood Brown Oklahoma connection in the NFL. But it did hint at a pretty rich fantasy partnership from what we did see. Through 6 games at the beginning of last season, with Murray as his quarterback, Hollywood Brown averaged 14.6 fantasy points per game, including 3 top 10 finishes, and an average safely over 10 targets per game. That was also with DeAndre Hopkins as the number 1 during that time. Now, I'd have been surprised if this partnership just picked up straight away last week with Kyler missing so much time, and as we've seen, him and Hollywood not playing that many games in the NFL together. But what I am doing is trying to acquire Hollywood Brown wherever I can. He's the number 1 on this team now. I don't think there's any wide receiver in the room that's as talented as him. And this week, he gets Houston, middle of the pack defense against the wide receiver, and we've seen they love a good shootout. So go and get Hollywood and plug him in this week. Sharps.
I've gone for Amari Cooper, wide receiver for the Browns, projected 12.8 points. Up against the Steelers this week, should be a juicy one. Steelers giving up the 4th most points currently to fantasy wide receivers. And I just think with Cooper, he's been really consistent the past few weeks, good number of targets. And I just feel like I think this Browns defense will probably win a lot of ball back against the Steelers. I think he'll have a lot of chances. The only thing that's really evaded him this season is the touchdown numbers, only on 2 this season. So I want a little bit of positive touchdown regression, Lou's favourite term. And I think this is potentially a week where it might occur. And I think also a relatively low projection given how talented Cooper is. So yeah, hoping for a nice week from Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I've gone for a player I think's got a pretty low projection. That's Christian Kirk, Jaguars' number 1 wide receiver. 13.8, that is a projection that Kirk has beaten in 7 of 9 games that he's played this year. Yeah, he's this team's best pass caption option, without a doubt. He leads the team in every notable receiving category: receptions, targets, yards, touchdowns. Tough matchup last week against the 49ers, but Kirk still recorded 6 catches for 104 yards. He was like the only shining light in that game for the Jags. And this week the matchup is much more favourable against the Titans defence, who are shelling out over 38 points per game to opposing wide receivers. That's wide receiver room combined, obviously. This might be a get-right game for the Jags and Lawrence, but it's a stay-right game for Christian Kirk, as he's been pretty damn consistent all year, and I expect that to continue this week.
At the tight end position, I'm going Tyler Higbee, projected 6.7 versus Seattle. Got a feeling on this one, also playing the projection. He's had time over the bye week to get over a bit of a knock that he had, as had Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford means a lot to all the offensive pieces and fantasy pieces for the Rams. He should be back, and if he is, I think Tyler Higbee is going to have a nice game in what I'm hoping is a nice NFC West matchup with a lot of points. Sharps?
I've gone for Cole Kmet, tight end for the Bears. Bit strange this week having to pick a real tight end, but I've gone for Kmet, projected 10.8 points, which is quite high compared to what I'm used to. But and I do know that obviously Kmet has hurt Lou a lot in the past. He's a bit of a boom bust guy, likes a goose, loves a goose, really, if we're being totally honest. But I just think going up against the Detroit Lions, who have been middling against tight ends, but I think what they do is they've got some good pass rushers, particularly Hutchinson. I think there's going to be a lot of little dinkers and dump-offs. I think a fair few targets for Kmet, obviously being a little tight end safety blanket. Past few weeks he's had 18, 24, and then a bit of a down week, 10 points last week, but I'm hoping he's not going to be a bust for me, and if we get a nice little touchdown as well, then that's where the hit's going to come from. So Cole Kmet for me.
I'm going to go Luke Musgrave, rookie tight end for the Packers, projected 8.3. The wide receiver room in Green Bay, it's a bit of a coin toss, but there's at least one pass catcher whose role's pretty solid, and that's Musgrave. He's seen over 4 targets a game, which granted might not sound like a lot, but I'll take that consistency at the tight end position. And he's posted his personal best in yardage in each of the last 2 games, along with a touchdown in week 9. So he's coming on a decent amount, gradually becoming relied on more and more in this offense as a solid option. And this week he plays the Chargers, who, as we said at the beginning of the show, they're an awful defense, the one that you want to target at any position, really, unless you play for the New York Jets. So yeah, I think Musgrave could be a nice start this week. Maybe another touchdown against the Chargers.
Nice. Speaking of games, we'll finish off with that game tier list. Sharples, what have you got for us?
Turn up for the Bucks, boys. Only one game.
Oh, yeah.
Tier this week.
Whoa.
It's a bad one, though. It's Commanders against the Giants.
Oh, no. That game gets worse every year, but at the end of every year, people make it out like those 2 teams are going to be good.
You know what? Hey, you know what? Don't play it. I don't even give them both a win. I don't care. Just don't play it.
Yeah, it's not going to make any difference, is it?
Moving into the meh category, we've got Browns, Steelers, Lions, Bears, Panthers, Cowboys, 2 one-sided, Jags, Titans, Jets, Bills, and then 2 which I wanted to put in good but couldn't bring myself to just yet. I've got the Texans, Cardinals, and Broncos, Vikings.
Okay.
I mean,
I do like that Texans Cardinals. Like I said, it highest over under of the week, and I'm very intrigued by the Browns Steelers just because the Steelers have been finding way to win games. That is sort of this is this exact game that the Steelers win. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
It's going to be a total slugfest.
Into the good, we've got Dolphins, Raiders, Packers, Chargers, 49ers, Bucks, and Rams.
The Raiders are stinking
Seahawks.
that up a little bit.
I don't know. I mean, they've won 2 on the bounce now with a new coach. I want to see if they can actually put something together. I don't think they can, but I want to see.
They can't.
Thanks for that, Luke. And into the great, we've got the Ravens against the Bengals, and The creme de la creme, Chiefs against the Eagles.
Yeah. I mean, it's the bookending the week with two amazing games and two games that are going to tell us a lot about some would-be contenders in the Ravens and the Bengals and some bona fide perennial Super Bowl teams in the Chiefs and the Eagles. Bit of a rematch there. Two names, winning teams from both of those games. I'm going to say Ravens, Eagles. Lou?
Bengals, Chiefs.
Sharples.
I've got the Bengals, Eagles.
To be fair, the Bengals, Eagles is my Super Bowl pick, isn't it? So I don't know why I said the Ravens. It must just be what I'm feeling like at the minute. Closing thoughts, lads. Cowboys minus 27.5. Would you take it?
I would smash that. Yeah.
Okay.
On the fence.
Thank you very much for listening. Enjoy, especially that Thursday night game and the Monday night game if you get to see them. And have yourself a good fantasy week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.